Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Karen Clark from Foxy 107, 104, as you can see here on the mic. And we're going to have a conversation today with Lenovo. Joining me on the screen right now is Calvin Crosslin from Lenovo. And Calvin, they prepped me for this conversation we're having, and then they sent me over your titles, and I was like, I can't read all of that. It's too much. It's too long. So I'm going to let you do the honors.
Absolutely, Karen. Thank you very much. Good day. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. So, yes, I'm Calvin Crosslin, and I'm the VP of HR at Lenovo. I'm
Mhm.
also our Chief Diversity Officer, and I'm the President of the Lenovo Foundation. So, all of our philanthropic activities.
Three things,
Three
three
things.
titles
Two hats.
on
Yeah,
one business card, front and back, or just one card on the
yeah,
front.
front and back.
Oh, front and back. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Totally
I
cool.
like it.
Totally,
It's
totally
efficient. It's
cool.
better than two cards.
Yes, it is.
So let's talk a little bit about you and your position at Lenovo. How did this all come to be?
Yeah, I have to back up a little bit to move forward, Karen.
Okay.
So it all started. My mother was an IBMer, so I'm second generation. She
Okay.
was a black female in tech. She was a
Mhm.
programmer and a systems engineer. Had a great career at IBM, and so I wanted to join IBM myself, which I did. Worked there for 25 years, and many people are probably aware, particularly in the local area, about the acquisition of IBM's PC business into
Mhm.
Lenovo, where we took PC to number one position and where we remain today. A little lesser known acquisition was in 2014 of our data center group. It was IBM Server Group, and it is now our Integrated Solutions Group, which is when I came over, October 2014. And that
Mhm.
business is also thriving under Lenovo's leadership. Shortly after joining, I got the courage to ask my predecessor, who is an absolute rock star, Yolanda Conyers, to be my mentor. And through that mentor-mentee relationship, developed a situation where I started to really understand what Yolanda was trying to drive for the corporation, and therefore I drove those same strategies and results across the business unit that I supported. So when Yolanda decided she was going to retire in the end of 2020, I was kind of the natural successor for her in this role.
Okay.
The organization took a chance and put me in the role, and I took on both the chief diversity officer role and the foundation role. And then shortly thereafter, picked up two internal clients, our chief legal officer and our chief IT security officer. So that's the third part of my job as VP of HR. So that's kind of how the journey happened for me to be in this role. I've been in it just a little over 2 years now.
So we're going to come back and revisit the diversity part of it because I have questions.
Sure.
But I also have an inside man who told me that you used to run track.
I did.
And so I have a good friend. I have an 11-year-old son. And I have a good friend who told me that every child should learn to play an instrument and every child should participate in a team sport.
Absolutely.
So, having run track and participating in this team sport, do you feel that that has helped you in this position?
Yeah, I think it's helped in just about everything I've done in life, playing football, running track, and now my son and I also race motorcycles together. And I
Hmm.
think the unique thing about track and field is on one level, it's an individual sport because of the
Hmm.
events that you train for. But on another level, it's a team sport because overall you're trying to win track meets as a team. So,
Hmm.
one, you become incredibly competitive. Two, when you're out there individually, you make sure you train hard because you don't want to embarrass yourself in public. Um, right? But also you learn when to lead and when to follow, because
Hmm.
oftentimes in track and field, if there's an event that we don't have enough athletes to participate in, it might not be your best event, but you may be called on to play that role because you want to earn points, right? So it
Right.
also sometimes takes you outside of your comfort zone. I'm a sprinter, hurdler, and long jumper, and in some meets, my coach might ask me to run the mile, right? And so you're like, well, this is not going to end well, but I'm going to do well enough to get these points. So I really think it teaches you how to win. It teaches you a level of humility, and certainly a level of being competitive, right? So and when you lose, right, you have to be a gracious loser when you don't when it's not your day.
So my friend was right. You do agree with that philosophy that kids should definitely do a team sport because that comes through later in life.
It absolutely does. Yeah, it absolutely teaches you how to be a good teammate, which translates into just about everything you do. How to be collaborative, like I said, how to lead in certain
Mhm.
situations, and how to follow. And I absolutely think taking a musical instrument or something like that is also important. I shouldn't even say I play the drum and the guitar. I play well enough, as I tell people, to know what a good drummer and a good guitarist sound like. But yeah, my mom made sure we did those types of activities growing up, and I'm very, very thankful for that.
We'll schedule a different call at another time to talk about the motorcycle racing.
Oh, sure.
I would like to circle back to that at some point. That's probably not something we need to tackle today.
Absolutely.
But so let's go back to the diversity, because this is what we hear all the time: DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Break it down to us so that we understand, what does that mean? What are these terms that seem to be floating around so much more now than they did previously?
Yeah, they really are. And so the way I would kind of define or characterize diversity really is representation. What's the percentage of your employee base that is either male or female, gender, LGBTQ plus, people with disabilities. So there's a variety of different demographics that you have that make up your workforce. So that's the diversity piece. Inclusion really is around creating a sense of community, a sense of family, a sense of belonging, right? And you hear all the time the comment of being able to bring your authentic self to work, which I don't think many of us could do years ago. I think we were all kind of trained that you behave a certain way at home, if you will, and then you conduct yourself perhaps differently in the workplace. And I'm not saying that that you perhaps blend them all together, but I do think we talk more openly now about things like sexual orientation or family background or religion and those types of things much more openly than we did years ago. And so I think that's the piece about an inclusion. And really, it gives people an opportunity to make sure that they feel part of the organization and that they themselves and their ideas are important and valuable to the organization. And then equity really is around the fact that we all don't start at the same starting point, right? And so there's a visual chart. There's several out there you've probably seen whether it's different size boxes and people are standing on to look over a fence.
Look over the fence, right?
Yeah. So you give everybody the same box and somebody's 6 foot tall and somebody's 5 foot tall. The person that's 5 foot's not going to be able to see over that fence, right? And so equity really means helping in some situations where people don't have the same starting point so that they're able to compete in the workplace.
So how does all of that fit together with Lenovo? What are you guys doing to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion?
That's a great question. So, one thing we look at is our overall employee population, right? Does our employee population reflect that of our customers, of the availability of talent, right? If you look at things like college graduation rates, the census data, those types of things, you want to make sure that your company represents, in particular, your customers. So that would be number one. From an inclusion perspective, we have several models. One we call the CARE model that really talks about what inclusion is, what it looks like, defines it, gives examples of inclusion, and gives you modules to grow inclusive behaviors, particularly inclusive behaviors when it comes to being a leader, right? So things like recognizing and mitigating bias, right? Being able to ensure psychological safety for your employees to talk about the things that you want to talk about in the workplace. Again, we've had some pretty horrific events in the last few years that we see on television, and being able to just pause and really ask each other how we're doing and pause and talk about some of these things, openly that happen in society, right? We obviously want to denounce these things, but we also want to have a zero tolerance policy for these things in our organization. But we also want to be open and talk about it versus just jump into business, making sure that people are in fact okay, right?
So I'm wondering, how does that affect the workplace, like a workplace pre and post DEI initiatives? Do you feel that it makes for happier employees, a more pleasant work environment? How do you see this affecting the workplace?
Yeah, it's a good question. And unlike many companies who really started doing this post George Floyd, particularly in the U.S., where we recognized there was an absolute need in many companies to do this, we've been doing this since 2005. My predecessor, Yolanda, was actually a female engineer and came into the organization specifically initially to address the differences in East-West culture. We are uniquely headquartered in Beijing, China, and Mooresville,
Mhm.
North Carolina. And so there are
Mhm.
cultural differences in terms of East and West, particularly with leadership style and things of that nature. And so that was Yolanda's initial mission. And I'd say probably around the 2014 timeframe is when she really started to focus more on the overall inclusion. And because of the fact that we have employees in 60 countries and we operate in 180 markets, you have an incredible variety of diversity, not only in gender and race, but you have it in terms of language, culture, religion, all of those things. And so, how are you going to
Mhm.
be most productive as a global company operating in 180 markets? And so, yes, I do think what you get is a higher level of engagement. There's a
Mhm.
lot of data out there with very credible sources like Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Fortune that talk about organizations that do diversity and inclusion well have higher market share, typically generate better revenue, and certainly better innovation. And so that's why it's important from an employer perspective. And again, because of the business we're in, when you talk about smarter technology for all, we really do mean all. And so when you think about that, our products, our services have to be geared towards a very, very diverse set of customers.
So, how do you guys measure um, your diversity, your inclusion? How do you set goals? And then how do you check in with yourselves to make sure we're doing it right?
Yeah, we have a few ways we do it. From an internal perspective, we have a engagement survey we conduct every year called Lenovo Listens. And we
Hmm.
ask a series of questions, and it really is designed to determine the things that we do well and the things where we have opportunities to do better. And from there, our leaders build action plans because we want to go full circle and let employees know we actually did something with this information once we ask. And we typically
Hmm.
highlight the top three things that we do well, and then we spend time on action plans of, say, the bottom three things where we don't do so well. And I'm proud to say that one of the questions that gets the highest score every year is that of our diversity and inclusion efforts. It was, I think, 89 4 years ago, and it's trended up to 94. And if you
Oh,
think about
wow.
that from, yeah, it's a high number not only internally, but if you think about our competitors in the marketplace, that is an incredibly high score. So it's from being intentional. Our chairman is very focused. His leadership team is very, very focused. I have a
Hmm.
board, a D&I board, that is made up of 9 executives that are mostly direct reports to the chairman or on what we
Hmm.
call his leadership team, the LEC. And so, yeah, we have a strong commitment from the top of the business around diversity and inclusion. And last but not least, there's environmental, social, and governance, which a lot of companies are focused on. You'll hear a lot about the environmental piece in particular when people are talking about net zero and
Mm.
circular economy. Well, the social piece is really around things like diversity, inclusion, and philanthropy. What are you doing to pay forward in the communities in which you live and work? So that's very important to our many stakeholders, our customers. It's important to our employees, our candidates, our investors, and our analysts. So again, there are multiple stakeholders that look at this and are very, very focused on whether or not they do business or how they rate us as an organization based on our ESG report.
So, how do you all encourage your staff, your employees to participate in your different DEI initiatives?
That's another great question. We're fortunate to have a lot of very passionate employees at Lenovo, and a lot of things start grassroots. But the thing that we do have is employee resource groups, and most of those employee resource groups started from somebody saying, I have a constituency that's important to me, and I'd like
Hmm.
to have a group internal to Lenovo for us to gather. And whether that's cultural sharing, whether that's celebrations of certain things, and
Hmm.
of course, there's also always, because you're talking about corporation, there's often a focus on things like mentoring and
Hmm.
growing people's skills and talents, sponsorship, and those types of things. And so, one of the ones that we had that I was an executive sponsor for many years is Blast. It's our Black ERG. It's Black Leaders Accelerating Technology Together. Excuse me,
Hmm.
Success Together. Uh,
Hmm.
and so that ERG is very, very active right now for Black History Month, as an example. And our
Oh,
OLA group,
wow.
is Hispanic, will be very, very active during Hispanic Heritage Month.
I love that. And that's got to make employees feel really good. It's got to make employees feel like you all think about me and you care about me and allow me and people who look or believe in the things that I believe in to celebrate here and to be included.
Absolutely. Like I said, there's a lot of cultural sharing.
Hmm.
There's a lot of opportunity too when we think about philanthropy to do things in the community for
Mm,
organizations that are near and dear to your heart. And through the foundation, we also encourage our employees to volunteer. We have about 80,000 employees with very unique gifts and talents. And so,
hmm.
you're able to lend those talents to organizations that may not have those skills. We have a matching gift program. Same thing. If you want to donate to a 503c organization, we will match those dollars. So we really have a lot of tools to give employees the opportunity to give to organizations that are very important to them.
I love that. I love the way that sounds. So, speaking of the community, it's my understanding that you all are sponsoring a local soccer club. Why does Lenovo think it's important to be a part of the local community?
Yeah, we sponsor Carolina Courage,
Hmm.
and one, it's it's as it's a female soccer team, but there's a
Hmm.
lot of other activities we do around that, around STEM education, right? We'll have camps, if you will, bring young females to camps and talk about careers in STEM, education, those types of things. So it's very very important. We have a relationship also with the Hurricanes, so it's just very important for us to be involved in the community here. We've got a program Evolve Small, where I think you've already talked about, with some other Lenovians that are very, very involved in that, focused on small business, in particular, businesses that are owned by minorities or by women. So yeah, it's very important for us to be involved in our local community.
Lenovians. That's another term that I'm going to put a little pin in and come back to that one later. I like that a lot. So it's my understanding that you guys do a lot of work with HBCUs as well. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So we have a HBCU internship program, which we go off to the HBCUs and recruit. And it's an opportunity to give students a view of a Fortune 500 company, a technology
Hmm.
company,
Hmm.
um, learn more about the workplace, obviously, and also for us to get a sense of them, right? If they're good at the assignments that they have, we get an opportunity to see their technical skills. We get a chance to see their soft skills, collaboration, leadership, and those types of things. So it's also a feeder program for us to hire them full time. And I think in 2021 we had 37 HBCU interns, and I want to say we had at least all of the schools in North Carolina. If I'm not mistaken, we had all of the HBCUs, a student from each of the HBCUs.
Wow. So, and that was going to be my next question. I know we are our state is peppered with
Yes,
HBCUs. Are is that program in other states as well, or is it primarily here?
it's in other states. Yeah, so
Okay.
we try to recruit the best students from the best colleges and universities around the country. Obviously, we focus on engineering schools or technical schools. So places like NCA&T are high on the radar screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
NCCU's right here in our backyard, Shaw,
Mm-hmm.
Signog, etc. So yeah, we have a very very strong focus on having partnerships with the HBCUs.
That sounds great. So, how are you guys working to diversify leadership? Because it sounds like diversity is very, very important to you. How do you make sure that the top looks like everybody else?
That's probably one of the most important things to do, right? When you look at a lot of organizations, even when they have pretty good representation, particularly of women and underrepresented groups, it not all time does the top of the organization reflect that. So there's really
Hmm.
three levers that we have to affect that. One is obviously retention of our
Hmm.
current workforce. The second is development and promotions, and we have two programs, and this kind of falls in the equity column. We have one that's called Women's Leadership Development, which is a global program for women to groom them for executive roles. And we have a program called Mosaic, which is for underrepresented groups in the US, and same type of program. And where the equity component comes in, it's the same leadership content that you would get in any other leadership course, except
Hmm.
that we spend a fair amount of time on the additional barriers that, say, women in the workforce face or underrepresented groups face in the workplace. And then we talk about strategies to overcome those barriers, right? So my role is really to do two things concurrently. One is continue to refine our culture and to continue to
Hmm.
make it a more level playing field across Lenovo, but
Hmm.
understanding that there's still biases across the world, not just in Lenovo. How do you
Right.
help people navigate those additional barriers that they may face, or understand that there's some things that they may not recognize they need to do that they in fact do? So culturally, sometimes women and underrepresented groups are told, you just go to work, keep your head down, and work hard, and great things happen. And
Right.
what the reality is, that's not always the case. You really have to build your network. You have to be intentional about the people that you have in your network. You should be intentional about having mentors, intentional about understanding who is a real sponsor for you, who's advocating for you when you're not in the room. And of course, you want to pay forward. You want to be a mentor to others and bring others forward. So those are the ways that we really try to achieve, our executive goals. And then the last but not least is hiring, right? A focus on having diverse slates of candidates in our hiring process.
So going back to those two programs that you've mentioned, the one for women and the one for minority groups, what have been the results of those programs and how long have they been around?
Yeah, the Women's Leadership Development Program, I think, was around since 2015, if I remember correctly. And what you saw right after that program was an immediate jump in our percentage of women executives. That was the brainchild of my predecessor. I'm a graduate of Mosaic, so as an example, I went right before I was appointed as ED. So since that time, I went in 2018. I've had two promotions. So I went from director to executive director, and now to vice president. So and I have several colleagues that have also gone through the program that are also now in the executive ranks. So it really is a good course. Like I said, it's the same leadership content you get in most courses around how do you adapt your leadership style, how do you have executive presence, how do you present to difficult audiences, those types of things. But then you have real conversations around, like I said, some barriers that you may face, and understand, what does your network really look like? Do you have real influencers and decision makers in your network? So those additional things that you have to do to be successful, we talk about in those courses.
That sounds great. I wish all companies did stuff like that and had programs like that. And clearly it works because, I mean, you're sitting here and you are a result of one of those programs.
Absolutely.
That sounds really, really great. So let's talk a little bit about things happening here in our backyard. Let's talk about things that you guys do in the Triangle, and let's touch a little bit on what you all have been doing with locally owned Black businesses.
Yeah, well, we talked about Evolve Small, right? And so that's one area where we try to provide, in some cases, financial support. Some cases, it's product donations. But the big thing is mentorship, right? There's when you have certain businesses don't have access to things like capital or access to the same network, we try to do those things as well. Mentor people around the important aspects of running a business, right? The financials of the business.
Oh, wow.
And things of that nature. So, that's a place, again, where I talk about people having unique gifts and talents that they can lend to others. That's one example. We talked about HBCUs. We have one that we're working on with 321 Coffee. They hire people who are neurodiverse. And I think they have 40 employees today, and they're working on a roasting factory. And so we're working on providing some technology for that factory. We're working on some financial sponsorship, and we're working on some AI, augmented intelligence or artificial intelligence, to help them understand how each of the processes work and what comes next in each phase. And hopefully by doing that, I think they have 100 people on a waiting list that want to work for 321. And I think because of the roasting facility and some of the help that we're providing, they're going to have an additional 200 hours weekly of work that they will have as a result of this roasting facility. So it's things like that. It's not just the product donations or the money. It really is having the ability to have some level of mentorship of business leaders that know how to run businesses successfully.
So I know somebody is watching this or listening to this right now and their ears perked up. So let me get this straight. Lenovo is out here helping businesses, offering them technology, offering them mentorship to make sure that they are guided the right way through everything that a business has to deal with. How do I find out more about that? Somebody wants to know, wait a minute, what is that he's talking about? How do I do that? Where do I go? How do I sign up?
Well, our Lenovo website is one way, and I can get you much more detailed information that we can share on the website of how to directly get to that.
Definitely. And we've got some information that is popping up below.
The link just popped up. So that's awesome. So that is the best place to go and to start to look at what the grant rounds are all about and how do you participate. That link is a wonderful resource.
And I love that because I love that you have someone that's a business that people can turn to here in the triangle where they can actually see your assistance. It's tangible, it's real. It's not just some random business out in the universe that said they got hope. Like they got assistance. It's right here in the triangle.
Exactly.
I love that. So I know that you guys do a lot of work with, as we mentioned, college students, HBCUs. So for someone that's listening right now or watching right now, and they are interested in working for a Lenovo type company, they would like a career in tech or STEM. What words of wisdom do you have for them? Because I know you got some words.
I have some words.
Look, and I know you've got a lot because you had to take a sip of water. You had to get ready. Go ahead, give it to us.
Yeah. So the traditional routes are great. Whether you're in high school and you have your counselors or you have your career counselors in university. YouTube to me is one of the great places. Maybe non-traditional, but I use it myself. My son and I have a trucking business. He just left him, as a matter of fact, a moment ago. And we're thinking about other passive income that we want to go pursue. And I think YouTube is a great place, a great resource. You can almost get an education, whether it's sometimes if I'm working on my truck and I stall out, or this watch I have on, which is way smarter than me and I can't figure it out sometimes, I'll pull up a YouTube video. But it works the same way with exploring career opportunities, with exploring technology. We talked about earlier, even things like music, right? You can learn how to play the drums or guitar on YouTube. So I think it's a wonderful resource to be able to search and look at different links about the various careers in STEM, research companies, and things of that nature. So that would be one place that like I said, I use personally. I think it's a wonderful place to be able to explore opportunities and learn more about all the types of careers there are in STEM.
They call it YouTube University for a reason.
I'm telling you, I joke about it all the time, but we really do use it all the time. So,
well, yeah, especially when we were in quarantine. I mean, I learned how to do things that let me see, how do I do my own nails? Let's look it up on YouTube. Like everything is there, everything you can possibly need. So what types of classes, what courses of study would you suggest to future Lenovo employees?
Yeah, I mean, it really is a variety of things, right? Because we are a technology company. So the usual things that come up are things like engineering, computer science, and those types of things. But obviously, we have folks in finance. We have people in marketing and sales. We have people in HR. So there's a lot of different careers you could pursue at a Lenovo. I'm actually a marketing major and found myself in HR. But yeah, there's a variety of paths that you can pursue to be at Lenovo or any other IT company.
I'm so glad we had this conversation because I feel like there are so many of our listeners and our viewers that are like, I had no idea what they were doing over there. I had no idea that they were this involved in the community. I had no idea that they were working that diligently and that they were that maniacally focused on making sure that the leadership was diverse and looks like their customer base. So I feel like you've shared a lot of really great information with us about the things that you all are doing at Lenovo and your initiatives and your participation in the community.
Thank you. Yeah, we're pretty proud of it. And we have a really good organization. Like I said, we have very, very passionate employees that really want to be active in their communities and with organizations that are important to them.
Before we get out of here, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners, or viewers, if anybody's watching this on the actual website? Anything else about Lenovo that you want people to know?
Oh, I was just going to confess that I'm a fan of yours, Karen. So I'll confess that I'm a big Karen Clark fan, and it's wonderful to be here today and have an opportunity to talk with you.
Well, good. I'm so glad. Listen, I tell people all the time, I have a child at home that is trying to eat me out of house and home. So please keep listening. I need this job. I appreciate it. I'm going to take that little clip and make sure I send it to all of the higher ups so that I can use it.
There you go.
thank you so much for joining us today and chatting with us about Lenovo. Thank you so much for your work in DEI. It's so important. And I'm so glad that you broke down what that means, because I think people hear the letters, but they don't even really know. And I'm so glad that you had an opportunity to break it down for our Foxy listeners. And I just appreciate you taking time out of your, what I know is a very busy schedule. I heard those emails popping in. Thank you for taking time to chat with us today.
Absolutely. It was my absolute pleasure. Love to come back anytime you want or need, and continue the conversation about anything you'd like, Karen. So thank you so much for the time.
Especially motorcycle racing. We're going to get to that later.
Happy to do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.